As I listened to Uncle Robert Paul Young, Warami Yalamundi 2020, describe the events in his life that resulted from being taken from his parents and sent to the Kinchela Boys' Home, I first utilised my understanding of deep listening in Didiri, Victorian Aboriginal Child and Community Agency 2020, which was to sit with the pain and discomfort I was experiencing. Uncle Robert Paul Young describes extremely painful events and is visibly upset during his interview. To better understand the meaning he is trying to convey, I don't rush ahead or ignore his feelings to only listen to his words. I let the weight of it all hit me and watched the video a few times. I also considered the approach described by Rinaldi, who describes listening as an active process in which we can respect and validate somebody by listening to their story with the intent of seeking to understand the meaning they are conveying. The challenges I encountered with my chosen approach were that I did have to watch the video multiple times to practice sitting with the discomfort I felt, listening to the events that Uncle Robert Paul Young detailed. I considered changing videos, but I reflected on the practice of Didiri, Victorian Aboriginal Child and Community Agency 2020, and the way that they describe grief, and that even pain and discomfort shouldn't be hurried. If Uncle Robert Paul Young is willing to share his story, then if I'm practicing story listening, I should sit with the discomfort so that I can hear the meaning that he's trying to convey and not fill the uncomfortable parts with my own ideas or opinions. Story listening challenged my existing ideas around the stolen generation. Uncle Robert Paul Young tied events from 60 years ago to the fact that he had only recently reunited with one of his sisters. His story was a reminder for me that this was not an event in past history, but many Aboriginal peoples alive today were taken from their families and still live with the trauma of those events. I also noticed the way that after everything he went through, Uncle Robert Paul Young could still look at the events with nuance. He described the inhumane treatment he suffered when being sent to the Kinchela Boys' Home, but also noted that his foster parents were kind and treated him like a human. Warami Yalamundi 2020. I have read stories and articles by Aboriginal peoples who were taken from their families and studied the events in a theoretical sense. But I found watching Uncle Robert Paul Young sharing these events quite difficult, as his emotion at describing his horrific treatment, his sadness and confusion when describing meeting his birth mother but not recognising her, and the point he made to defend his foster parents as actually just treating him like a human were all very confronting. They weren't just words on paper. It's the story of a real person, and I very much was uncomfortable with the guilt that I felt, that I've never experienced anything like that. My approach to story listening is that I aim to show the storyteller that I'm actively trying to understand the meaning that the storyteller is conveying. Through deep listening, questions, connections, and structures. Humphrey 2022. Rinaldi 2011 tells us that when we feel heard, we can in turn develop a capacity for listening to understand. This approach aligns with my understanding of inclusive practice, as children who feel confident to share their identity and ideas will have a greater capacity for listening to gain meaning from others. This provides more opportunities for positive and diverse influences on children's development that provide a foundation for inclusion. Early Childhood Australia 2014, page 2. The way that I listened to the story gave space not only to listen to the facts, but allowed for me to sit with the emotions Uncle Robert Paul Young was going through and allow him to highlight the way he wanted the information to be interpreted. The Early Years Learning Framework, Australian Government, Department of Education 2022, determines that educators should challenge themselves to consider how their actions may exclude or silence children, and to consider their voices and the voices of their families when making decisions. In practice, I believe that my story listening approach encourages me to not only engage in factual listening, Waddington, Azambuja 2022, but to hold space so that I can understand the full context of what I'm being told. The facts of a story may be different when viewed through the lens of a child's cultural background or their emotions when delivering a story. This can all provide valuable information about what belonging and inclusion means to that individual.